My name is Emma Rodriguez, and at 29, I never thought I'd be racing through the worst blizzard in decades to find my estranged mother. 4 years of silence, broken by one terrifying voicemail that changed everything. The snow was coming down so hard I could barely see 10 feet ahead as my car crawled along the interstate. When I finally found her, collapsed against the brick wall of that abandoned diner, her lips blue and body shaking uncontrollably, I knew some journeys change you forever. My life in Denver had been carefully constructed, a world away from the chaos of my childhood. At 29, I was finally thriving as a graphic designer at a tech startup, living in a beautiful apartment with mountain views, dating Mark, a kind architect who knew nothing about my complicated past. I'd built a life where everything made sense, where there were number 3 a.m. phone calls from police stations or eviction notices taped to doors. It wasn't always terrible with Mom. When I was little, Linda Rodriguez was the mother who packed elaborate lunches with handwritten notes and stayed up all night sewing my Halloween costumes. She taught me to paint watercolors on our tiny kitchen table and made up bedtime stories about brave princesses who saved themselves. I still remember how she'd stroke my hair when I had nightmares, humming Spanish lullabies her own mother had sung to her. But addiction steals people piece by piece. The changes started when I was around 10, missed school events, forgotten promises, empty wine bottles multiplying in the recycling. By 13, I was forging her signature on permission slips and hiding my lunch money so it wouldn't disappear. I became the adult while she spiraled deeper into pills and alcohol. The final break came during my senior year of college. I'd brought my boyfriend home for Thanksgiving, a sweet pre-med student named David who I was sure was the one. I'd spent weeks preparing Mom, begging her to stay sober for just one day. She promised she would. She lasted exactly 2 hours before she was slurring her words and making inappropriate comments about David's pretty boy face. When I tried to get her to stop, she knocked over her wine glass and launched into a tirade about how I thought I was too good for her now with my fancy education and perfect boyfriend. "You're just like your father," she screamed as David and I tried to leave. "The second things get hard, you abandon ship. Well, go ahead and run. I never needed you anyway." Those words, comparing me to the father who'd walked out when I was 5, cut deeper than anything she'd ever said. I left that night and didn't speak to her for 4 years. I changed my phone number, moved cities, and built a life she couldn't touch. My therapist called it necessary boundaries. My friends supported my decision to go no contact. But sometimes, in quiet moments, a small voice wondered if I'd given up too easily. Then last Tuesday, I got a voicemail from an unknown Montana number that made my blood freeze. "Emma? Emma, baby, is that you?" My mother's voice was thin, confused, desperate. "I don't know where I am. Everything's white, and I can't find my car. I think I was trying to get to you. I'm so sorry for everything. I need help, Mija. I'm so cold." The message cut off abruptly. When I called back, it went straight to voicemail. I spent the next hour making frantic calls. Our old neighbor in Phoenix told me Mom had moved out months ago, leaving no forwarding address. The phone number traced to a cell tower near Glacier Falls, Montana, a tiny town 300 miles north, right in the path of a massive winter storm. "You can't seriously be thinking of driving up there," Mark said, watching me throw warm clothes into a bag. "They're calling for 2 feet of snow. The highways will be impassable." "She's my mother, Mark." She sounded terrified. "She's also the woman who made your childhood hell and told you never to contact her again." His words stung because they were true. But the fear in my mother's voice haunted me. What if she was hurt? What if she was having some kind of medical emergency? "I have to try," I said, grabbing my keys. If something happens to her and I did nothing, I couldn't live with myself. Mark sighed, recognizing the determination in my eyes. "Then take my SUV. It has all-wheel drive. And promise me you'll turn around if it gets too dangerous." I agreed, though we both knew I was lying. The drive started deceptively well. Denver suburbs gave way to rolling hills as light flurries danced in my headlights. But within 2 hours, the weather turned vicious. What had been gentle snowflakes became a wall of white, and the wind started howling so hard it shook the SUV. I stopped at a truck stop diner as visibility dropped to almost nothing. Inside, the warmth and smell of coffee felt like salvation. "Where you headed, honey?" asked the waitress, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes. "Glacier Falls." She frowned. "Not tonight, you aren't. They closed Highway 2 an hour ago. This storm's a killer." A trucker at the counter overheard us. "There's a back road, Forest Service Route 15. Dangerous in good weather. Damn near suicidal tonight. But it's the only way through." He drew me a rough map on a napkin, warning me about sharp curves and steep drops. "Whatever's pulling you north must be mighty important." "It is," I said simply. The back road was a nightmare. Narrow, winding through dense forest, with drops I couldn't see but could feel. My headlights reflected off the snow, creating a disorienting tunnel of white. I crawled forward at 15 miles per hour, hands cramped on the steering wheel. 3 hours later, I hit ice on a curve and slid sideways into a snowbank. The engine died. My heart pounded as I tried to restart it. Nothing. I was stranded in the middle of nowhere with no cell service and temperatures dropping fast. Just as panic started to set in, headlights appeared through the storm. A park ranger in a government truck stopped and helped pull me out. "You're crazy to be out here," he said, but not unkindly. "Follow me to the highway. I'll get you to town." By the time I reached Glacier Falls, it was past 2 a.m. The tiny mountain town was buried under snow, streets empty except for the occasional snowplow. I found the one motel with a vacancy sign and collapsed in a small room that smelled like pine cleaner and old cigarettes. I tried calling my mother's number again. Still nothing. Dawn brought no relief from the storm. The motel clerk told me the roads out of town were closed indefinitely. State patrols pulling people out of ditches all over the county. I showed him my mother's photo, an old picture from before things got really bad. "Have you seen this woman? Her name is Linda Rodriguez. She called me from somewhere around here." He studied it carefully. "Maybe. There was a woman asking directions yesterday at the gas station. Seemed confused, kept talking about finding her daughter in Denver. Jose might know more. He runs the place." The gas station was a few blocks away. Jose, a man in his 50s, nodded when he saw the photo. "See, she was here yesterday morning. Kept asking how to get to Denver, but she was driving north, not south. I tried to tell her she was going the wrong way, but she seemed, how do you say, not all there." My heart sank. If Mom was confused enough to drive in the wrong direction, she could be anywhere. "She said her car was making noises," Jose continued. "I told her about Dave's garage on the outskirts of town. Maybe she went there." Dave's Auto Repair was a small shop surrounded by junked cars, all now buried under snow. Dave himself was a bear of a man with oil-stained hands and a concerned expression when I explained the situation. "Yeah, I remember her. Older Honda Civic, engine was shot. Told her it would cost more to fix than the car was worth. She got real upset, started crying about needing to find her daughter." "What happened then?" "I felt bad for her, you know? Gave her some coffee, let her use my phone. But she kept dialing wrong numbers, getting frustrated. Finally, she said she'd wait for her daughter to call back and left on foot." "On foot? In this weather? Where was she going?" Dave shrugged helplessly. "She was talking about the old diner up Highway 2. Said she used to take her daughter there for pancakes. But that place has been closed for years." My blood turned to ice. The old diner. I remembered it from childhood visits to my grandmother. Mom used to drive us there for special occasions, ordering stacks of blueberry pancakes while I colored on paper placemats. Highway 2 was officially closed, but I had to try. The SUV handled the deep snow better than I'd hoped, though progress was agonizingly slow. After an hour of white-knuckle driving, I saw it through the storm, a low building with a faded sign, dark windows, and snow piled against its walls. And there, against the brick wall beside the entrance, was a figure I almost missed in the blowing snow. I ran the last 50 yards, my heart hammering with recognition and terror. It was Mom, curled into herself, covered in snow, her face pale blue with cold. She wore only a light jacket and jeans, nowhere near enough protection from the elements. "Mom." I dropped to my knees beside her, shaking her shoulder. She didn't respond. For a terrifying moment, I thought I was too late. Then her eyelids fluttered. "Cold," she whispered, barely audible above the wind. So cold. Relief flooded through me. She was alive, but hypothermia was setting in fast. I had to get her warm immediately. The diner door was locked, windows too high to break safely. But around back, I found a storage shed with a broken padlock. Inside, it was cramped but windproof, enough to buy us time. I helped Mom sit against the wall and wrapped my coat around her. Her clothes were soaked through, which made everything worse. "Mom, how long have you been out there?" She looked at me with confusion, as if seeing me for the first time. "Emma? Is that really you?" "Yes, it's me. I got your message. I came to find you." Tears slipped down her frozen cheeks. "I knew you would. Even after everything, I knew you'd come." As I rubbed her hands, trying to restore circulation, memories flooded back. Our trips to this very diner when I was little, how she'd let me order chocolate chip pancakes for dinner, how we'd sit in the corner booth making up stories about the other customers. "Why were you trying to find me, Mom? What happened?" She was quiet for so long I thought she'd lost consciousness. Then she spoke, her voice clearer than before. "I got sick, Mija. Really sick." My hands stilled. "What do you mean?" "Started forgetting things. Little things at first, where I put my keys, what day it was. Then bigger things. Got lost coming home from the store I'd shopped at for 20 years. The words hit me like physical blows. "What did the doctors say?" "Early onset dementia. Maybe Alzheimer's. They're not sure yet." She closed her eyes briefly. "I'm only 55, Emma. Too young for this." I felt like the world was tilting beneath me. While I'd been building my perfect life in Denver, my mother had been facing this nightmare alone. "Why didn't you call me? Why didn't you tell me?" "You were so angry. Had every right to be. And I was ashamed. Didn't want you to see me falling apart again."
Mom, no.
"You should have. Let me finish. Please." Her grip tightened on my hands. "I've been sober for 18 months, Emma. Longest I've ever made it. But the disease, it's taking everything anyway." Sober. The word hung between us like a revelation. While I'd been assuming the worst, she'd been fighting the hardest battle of her life. "I lost my apartment," she continued. "Couldn't remember to pay bills. Been staying with friends, but I keep getting confused, wandering at night. They can't handle it." "So, you decided to drive to Denver?" She nodded weakly. "Wanted to see you one more time while I still could. Wanted to explain, to apologize properly. But I got turned around, drove north instead of south. By the time I realized, the storm hit." The pieces fell into place. Her confused voicemail, the abandoned car, her inappropriate clothing for the weather. All symptoms of a mind beginning to fail her. I thought of all the times she'd failed me growing up, the chaos and disappointment. Had some of it been early symptoms we'd both missed? It didn't excuse everything, but it added a layer of tragedy I'd never considered. "We need to get you to a hospital," I said, helping her stand. The shed had blocked the worst of the wind, but she was still dangerously cold. "I'm sorry, Emma," she whispered as I supported her weight. "For everything. You deserved so much better than what I gave you." In all our years of conflict, she'd never offered such a direct apology. The simplicity of it, here in this freezing shed while we fought for survival, broke something open inside me. "I'm sorry too, Mom. For cutting you off, for not being there when you got sick."
No.
Her voice grew stronger. "Don't you dare apologize. You did what you had to do. I was toxic, Mija. I know that now." The walk back to the SUV felt endless. Mom leaned heavily on me, her steps uncertain. But she was talking now, telling me about her sobriety, the support group that had become her lifeline, the community garden where she volunteered. 18 months, she said again, as if the number still amazed her. "I wanted to call you so many times, to tell you I was different. But I was scared you'd think it was just another lie. I would have, I admitted. Back then, I wouldn't have believed you. But you came anyway. When I needed you most, you came. The drive to the hospital in town took 2 hours through the storm. Mom drifted in and out of consciousness, but I kept talking to her about my job, about Mark, about the life I'd built. She listened when she could, asking questions that showed she was still in there, still my mother beneath the confusion and cold. The emergency room staff moved quickly, recognizing severe hypothermia. They whisked Mom away, leaving me standing in the bright fluorescent lights, suddenly aware of my own exhaustion. A doctor eventually found me in the waiting room. Your mother is stable but critical. The hypothermia was severe, complicated by dehydration and malnutrition. The next 24 hours will tell us a lot. Is she going to be okay? She's fighting. And the fact that you found her when you did gives her a much better chance. I called Mark, sobbing as I explained everything. He was on a plane within hours, arriving at the small Montana hospital as snow continued to fall outside the windows. How is she? He asked, wrapping me in his arms.
Alive.
For now. Mom woke up the next day, confused but coherent. The doctors ran tests, confirming the dementia diagnosis and outlining treatment options. There were medications that could slow the progression, structured care environments that could help maintain her quality of life. What happens now? I asked Dr. Williams, the neurologist assigned to her case. She shouldn't live alone anymore. The episodes of confusion will increase in frequency and severity. She needs supervision, especially with medications and activities like driving. The options swirled in my mind. Memory care facilities were expensive and impersonal. Staying in Montana wasn't practical for my career. But bringing her to Denver meant disrupting the life I'd carefully built. I want you to come live with us, I told her that evening as we sat in her hospital room. Surprise flickered across her face.
Emma, no.
Your life is just getting started. I won't be your burden. You're not a burden. You're my mother, and I've missed too much already. This disease, it's going to get ugly. Confusion, mood swings, eventually not recognizing you.
You didn't sign up for that.
Neither did you. But here we are. Mark squeezed my hand. We have that spare room, he said quietly. It gets good light. It could work. Tears filled Mom's eyes. Are you sure? Both of you. I looked at Mark, this man who was willing to reshape his life for my complicated family, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. We're sure. The next few months were an adjustment period for everyone. We moved Mom into our spare bedroom, decorated with photos and her art supplies. Mark proved remarkably patient, developing his own relationship with her that sometimes surprised me with its ease. There were good days and bad days. On good days, Mom was lucid, helpful around the house, full of stories about her recovery and the person she was becoming. On bad days, she became confused about where she was, sometimes reverting to old arguments as if no time had passed. I learned patience I never knew I had. I learned to redirect rather than correct, to find the person behind the disease even when she couldn't find herself. One evening, about 3 months after the storm, I found Mom sitting at the kitchen table with a photo album I hadn't seen in years. Look what I found, she said, patting the chair beside her. Remember this? It was a picture of us at the old diner, me maybe 7 years old, chocolate smeared on my face, both of us grinning at the camera. You are so excited about those chocolate chip pancakes, she said, her voice soft with memory. You told the waitress it was your birthday, even though it wasn't, just to see if you could get free ice cream. Did it work? Of course it did. You were always too charming for your own good. We sat there looking through photos, Mom's memory surprisingly sharp for distant events even as recent ones slipped away. She told me stories I'd forgotten or never knew, how proud she was when I learned to read, how she'd saved every drawing I'd ever made, how she used to worry I was too sensitive for the world. I wasn't always a disaster, was I? She asked, a rare moment of self-awareness about her past.
No, Mom.
You weren't, and you're not now either. 6 months later, Mark and I were planning our wedding, and the first person we told was Mom. She was having a good day, lucid and present. My Emma's getting married, she said, pulling me into a hug. I always knew you'd find someone who deserved you. The wedding was small, held in our backyard with close friends and family. Mom walked me down the aisle, her steps careful but proud. In the photos, you can see the confusion in her eyes, but also the love. She might not have understood all the details, but she understood what mattered, that her daughter was happy. Our Sunday tradition began that fall. Every weekend, weather permitting, I'd take Mom somewhere special. The botanical gardens, a lakeside park, sometimes just for ice cream. These drives became sacred to me, moments of connection that transcended the ravages of her disease. A year after the snowstorm, we established a new routine. Mom moved to an assisted living facility nearby that specialized in memory care. It wasn't giving up, it was acknowledging that she needed more support than we could provide at home, especially after she'd wandered out at 3 a.m. looking for her childhood home in Texas. The facility, Mountain View Gardens, was warm and welcoming. Mom's apartment overlooked a courtyard where she could see flowers blooming through the seasons. The staff knew her as Linda, who made the best coffee, not just Linda with dementia. I visited every day after work and took her out every weekend. Mark often joined us, bringing flowers or her favorite pastries. She had good days and bad days, but the medication helped stabilize her condition somewhat. Work provided an unexpected source of healing when my company took on a client developing an app for dementia patients and their families. I threw myself into the project, channeling my experience into something that could help others navigate this difficult journey. Your mother would be proud, my boss said after seeing the finished product. She is proud, I corrected. She may not understand the details anymore, but she knows it's important to me. One Sunday in spring, almost exactly 2 years after the storm, I fulfilled a promise I'd made to myself. I drove Mom back to Montana, back to that old diner where I'd found her. The place looked different in sunshine, just an abandoned building beside a highway. Nothing like the snow-shrouded refuge of my memory. We were here before, Mom said suddenly, studying the faded sign. Something important happened here. That's right. Something very important. You saved me, she said with sudden clarity. When I was lost and cold, you found me. We saved each other, Mom. She squeezed my hand. I'm still here, you know. Even when I forget things, even when I don't know where I am, some part of me is still here. The profound awareness took my breath away. These moments of clarity were becoming rarer, making them precious beyond measure. I know, Mom. I see you. As we sat there in the spring sunshine, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The 300-mile drive through the blizzard had been just the beginning. The real journey, forgiveness, acceptance, learning to love each other as we actually were rather than as we wished we'd been, was ongoing. There would be more decline ahead, more challenges, more days when she wouldn't recognize me. But I no longer saw it as a burden. It was a privilege, the privilege of being present, of bearing witness to my mother's life in all its complexity. The drive home was peaceful, Mom dozing in the passenger seat as familiar mountains rolled by. When she woke, she looked at me with complete recognition. Thank you for finding me, Emma, she said. And thank you for letting me find you too. That evening, as I helped her settle back into her apartment at Mountain View, she grew thoughtful. I've been thinking about what happens later, she said, arranging her medications. When I can't make decisions anymore. I sat beside her on the bed, hearing the fear beneath her words. When that time comes, she continued, I want you to remember the woman I became, not just the one I was. I want you to keep living your life, even when I can't be part of it anymore. The request broke my heart and healed it simultaneously. Even facing cognitive decline, she was still trying to protect me. That day isn't here yet, I said firmly. And until it comes, we make the most of every moment we have. She nodded, satisfied. That's all any of us can do. Our Sunday drives continue. Sometimes she recognizes where we're going, sometimes every destination is a surprise. But the simple act of being together creates its own meaning. Whether she remembers my name or not, whether she knows I'm her daughter or just a kind woman who visits regularly, Love exists in the spaces between words, in the comfort of familiar presence. Yesterday, as we drove through the mountains with autumn light filtering through golden leaves, she reached over and patted my hand. "I like being with you," she said simply. "I like being with you too, Mom." "Just drive," she said, settling back in her seat. "Wherever we're going, I'm happy to be going there with you." The road ahead remains uncertain. There will be more decline, more loss, more days when the mother I know seems unreachable. But the blizzard taught me something profound. Sometimes the longest journeys aren't measured in miles, but in the courage it takes to find our way back to each other. I found my mother freezing outside that abandoned diner 2 years ago. But the truth is, we both found something that night, a second chance, a new understanding, and proof that love can survive even the worst storms. Every Sunday, I'm reminded that the journey home isn't always about returning to where you came from. Sometimes it's about discovering where you belong, right here, right now, in this moment, with the people who matter most. The storm that nearly killed us both ended up saving us in ways I never could have imagined. And for that, despite everything, I'll always be grateful.